So week 3, session 3 of Deep Dive 2. I'll orient us as usual by taking a look at the syllabus once more so that we're all clear on where we're at in that sequencing of learning. And I'll also pop the syllabus into the chat if anybody would like to follow on their own computer rather than looking at my screen. So again, with our kind of our global eye on how we're using and integrating all of these different coaching tools from the Learn tab, from the site implementation toolkit, and from the LBC library into our coaching. And we're thinking about, okay, how are we integrating all those tools to help move teachers toward developing more high quality skills lists and mini tasks or instruction. So last week, we really dug into thinking about and learning about and looking at examples of aligned skills ladders. So skills ladders that, or excuse me, skills themselves that were aligned with the focus standards and the demands present in writing assignment prompts. This week, we're going to continue on with that focus on skills lists. We're actually going to workshop your own skills lists. So we'll think again with our leader and our learning hats on. We'll talk about what the quick and common steps are for workshopping skills lists. And then Monique and I will actually give you time to get back into your own modules and apply any recent feedback you got from peer review or conduct any edits on your own skills list to make sure your skills are not too broad, not too narrow, but meet that just right band where they are they're tailored to your focus standards while still ensuring that they're focused on building enduring literacy skills. So we're going to start off with talking about the sessions that you looked at for homework during your asynchronous time. And that's IC2 sessions 5 and 6. So I'm going to pop those up on my screen. Okay. And just as we did last session, I'm going to give you a few moments to look back at sessions 5 and 6, review any notes that you captured when you were reviewing the sections, and then decide what are your key takeaways from each section. In particular, I would like you thinking about how you would facilitate this session. So what do you think can be gained by using specific parts as pre and post work? What items do you think need to be completed in a collaborative planning environment? And just which items do you think are the highest leverage pieces of content from sessions 5 and session 6 in design? So I am actually going to stop sharing my screen so that you have, I'll put 5 minutes on the clock so that you have enough time to review sessions 5 and 6 or review your notes about them and then pop your answers into the chat. So I'll pop these questions into the chat and then I will give 5 minutes for you to review sessions 5 and 6 and just offer that thinking into the chat. So again, head back into the sessions, review any notes you captured, and decide what's the key content, what items could you facilitate, or excuse me, what items could be used as pre or post work, and then what needs to be completed during a collaborative PLC. Okay, go ahead and transition to the chat and pop in your thoughts. Key takeaways, content that you think is the highest leverage from sessions 5 and 6. Again, we're in IC2. And then anything you think, I always love the discussion about what you think might be decent for people to do pre or post a PLC meeting, and then what is essential to do together. Nice, Nada. I really appreciate, you're thinking about what you might have them do ahead of time or just even look at before they come to the meeting, and then following up with the reflection questions so that you can be sure you're pushing them to make the adjustments to their skills list. Nice. And Marina, I really, really like your point about, I'll share my screen again, about connecting with the rubric, because that's often where, I mean, everybody feels beholden. Everybody has to score student work and offers kids and their parents those scores. So I often find that's a place where the relevance can really be built up quite a bit. Anybody else want to comment on that section at the end of session 6, how they've used it or how they've seen teachers respond to it? I'll get to it here. Oop. So we do the rubric overview and then get into the different dimensions of it and have people explore the rubric and ideally select which dimensions they are going to score for with the module. One other note you may have seen in the coaching tips sidebar is, let me find up to it. So when we do ask people to complete their skills lists, there's an active facilitation note that guides you to consider if now might be a nice time to have people swap tasks and then try to respond to one another's tasks before they do get in and complete their own skills lists. So we had talked in previous sessions about how sometimes it's much higher leverage to have people do the respond to the task activity with someone else's task instead of their own. So they're kind of not stuck in their own thinking about their task or stuck thinking, oh, no, I have everything I need. Like this is a fine task. They can often have some nice aha moments when they're working with their colleague's task. So, all right, let's scoot along. Now that we have sessions 5 and 6 fresh in our minds again, we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the coaching tips in session 6 as we go along today. Toward the end of our time together, we'll get back to it. But what I want to do is I'm going to kick it off to Monique, and she's going to start a little bit of a discussion about what high quality feedback is. And then we're actually going to come back to session 6 to practice how we might write some feedback on a sample skills list. So Monique, I'll stop sharing and you can take over. Go for it.
Had to remember to unmute myself.
Always.
So always. When we're thinking about feedback, we know we have to have the same terminology. We've got to make sure we're on the same page. And so just take a second to read these little jot notes. So when I think of feedback, especially to my PLCs, and when I'm working with these teams, getting them to really increase proficiency in the work that they're doing is the key to what we want, right? And so how do we do that? And if we can't use evidence and use criteria, use artifacts to guide them, then sometimes the feedback sounds all mushy or just too broad and we don't know what the focus is. So the quality feedback we need to have is that ongoing discussion, making sure that we're working together with evidence from artifacts, just like we want our students to use evidence from what they're researching. We want to make sure we use evidence from the work we're doing with our teachers. And that can be a challenge sometimes to get that depth of work with them. I mean, I know I struggle sometimes making sure that I'm giving them just-in-time feedback. I will find too many things to give them. And so how do I focus that feedback in? What makes that feedback really high quality and strong? And one of the best documents we have is this feedback checklist. And that is linked. I'm going to copy and paste it into
the
chat, unless you've already beat me to it. I was just going to say, unless Megan's already beat me to it, she's a lot faster navigating this stuff than I am. It must be an age thing. So if you think about when you're giving feedback to your teachers, you want it actionable. You want to make sure it's the priority that you focused on. You want to give them something specific. You want it to be standards driven. And a real key, guys, it needs to be supportive and short. Teachers are busy. they don't have time to read 3 paragraphs of feedback about their teaching task. When I went through the national jurying process on my module, I got this great feedback. It was really deep, but I was working on it outside of the classroom. If I had gotten that as a teacher, I think it would overwhelm me. And when we're working with them, we need to think about what is that specific high leverage piece of feedback that we're going to give them that's going to move this forward. So thinking on that and your own experience with teaching tasks, can anybody come up with something that really resonated with them as they got feedback?
Can we share verbally?
Please do.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, one of the things that helped me after I got the feedback from, I don't know, one of the peer review things I submitted to was having and I know this isn't always possible, but was having a workshop. So I don't remember even who did it, but someone from LDC offered during Deep Dive 1 a chance to just jump on. And there was something about just honestly the fact that I had to focus on it then, because when you're reading it and when we're busy, there's so much stuff coming at it, but it was looking at the feedback, the application of it, and that direct like verbal confirmation that I was implementing what was suggested correctly. And then it was easier than to just kind of take that and finish it up, as opposed to the workshop, Jane, as opposed to just processing on my own. And then I'll be honest, a little bit like shooting in the dark, whether the revisions, because if time is crunched, I want my revisions to be the ones, honestly, that they're asking for, because I'm kind of going for that gold star or whatever. So the workshop was awesome. It was a really good use of like 30, 45 minutes.
That's excellent to hear. It's like we paid you to say that, because at the end of this at the end of this session, we're going to give you the opportunity to sign up just for a half-hour one-on-one to process and apply any feedback you got on your ladder or anything you still need to do with the ladder for your module. So I'm really glad that was useful.
You can pay me. You didn't. I'm just kidding.
I could pay
I'll
you.
take compensation.
I'll send you a 20.
But one final thing on that, even like for teachers, and is just, I've honestly, in February, I have offered to do, there's like one PLC with some of them that we can't make, and I offered to do just like 30-minute individual check-ins with teachers if they want them. It'll be interesting to see who signs up or not, but even seeing that some teachers need more support than others. Others are kind of like good with the feedback, but others.
Great point though. Yeah, offering that.
And I've done that, Marina. I've done that with some of my PLCs, especially in April and May. It's hard for them with all the testing. And I've offered that 20 and 30 minutes, and the teachers who've taken me up on it just sing the praises of that moment. What I'd like to have is more teachers sign up. It's hard to get them to commit, like you said, because once they commit, then they really have to develop those skills. And they have to think about it and talk about it and commit to it. And so it's, again, that just-in-time feedback. One other piece here is there are some resources to help you get through that. And there's some pitfall stems, feedback stems. There's also some responsive coaching questions. So you have access to this. And it's a great resource to jump in and just look at what you can use to help you. The other thing that I've found is going back over the task and rewriting it in different templates. Even if they go back to the original template, it helps them kind of guide their thinking and grow their thinking. So now I'm going to throw it back to you, Megan, and
in the studio.
Stop sharing. Yep, back to you in the studio, Megan.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about feedback as a group, and I don't want to belabor the point unnecessarily. I want to privilege our time today with actually getting into practicing giving feedback on skills. So I'll just say briefly, we know kind of the expansive and catalyzing power of feedback. I'm not going to take you line by line through this infographic, but we do know that one piece of feedback can extend into the development of a high quality module that can then get shared with others in a network pretty quickly. So feedback leads to higher quality tasks and skills ladders, which in turn leads to more people trying them out in their networks. And so that's a big theory of action behind the LDC work, as you know, that coach feedback, actionable and specific coach feedback, leads to higher quality teacher work, and thus leads to higher student outcomes and student development of these literacy skills. So I'm actually going to shoot us into a different document so that we can practice applying some of this feedback. What I'd like for you to have up is the Pass 4 document, which I did pop in the chat. And you can be thinking, obviously we'd like our feedback to hit all 9 of these points. But for our time today, if you want to just drill in on like select 2 that you really want to try to embody in this little practice round of ours. Maybe it's something you've been working on. You know, if you feel like some of your feedback hasn't really been as specific enough, or you really want to shorten it up for people so that they'll kind of read it and do something with it more quickly, whatever it is for you. Pick 1 or 2 that you'll just work on for this evening with our practice activity. So I have the Pass 4 document up, and then I'm going to put one more link in the chat to our practice skills list. And I'd like you to pull both up on your screen. So I'll give you a moment, and then we'll meet back here. So before we get into checking out this example, I'm going to bring up something many of you have seen already, which is a suggested protocol for looking at skills and instruction or instructional ladders with your teachers. Today, we're really going to practice applying the first 4 steps of the protocol for the skills list. Let me make sure. So let me just run you through these steps, and then I'll put this link in the chat for you too, if you'd like to have it open on your screen. We're gonna read the task and the focus standards. First things first, right? And make sure that we know what the specific thinking work of the task is. So we need to, for that, usually you need to identify what's the content kids are reading about and writing in response to, what's the cognitive demand, and thus what is the text interaction based on the cognitive demand and the literacy standards. We might take a look at what product they're being expected to produce too. And then actually what I'm gonna do is, Kimba gave us a nice shortened list outside of this protocol a little bit to look at our practice skills list. So I might not even put this link in the chat for you right now, because instead I want you focusing in on these 4 steps. We'll make them a little bit bigger at the top of our doc here. For today, we're going to look at the task that I have here in the document for us. Then we're going to look at the reading and content standards and the demands of the task. And then we're going to look at the skills list and see if if you printed this out and I had you highlight it, could you find evidence of the focus standards and the task demands in the skills list? And then we're going to think together about whether or not the wording of the skills is too broad, too narrow, or is meeting that just right mark, where it is asking kids to do the thinking work of the standards, but also is focusing them on developing enduring skills that they can carry with them beyond the assignment and beyond this particular classroom. One other thing to note is that the wording for the task isn't just an activity. For instance, note take on chapter 4 of X book, right? Like, or note take for evidence of a character's reaction to like this specific event that takes place in the book. Also, you also don't want to see, it's almost like a prompt for the kids in the skills section, which sometimes you can see. So just keep your eye on that. We really want to see it's the ability to. We're looking for actual skills to be defined. So I'll read the task and focus standards with everyone together, and then give you a little bit of time to look at the skills list on your own. So it says, after reading the address of Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry Clay Pete's editorial, write an essay in which you analyze how the author's perspectives shaped their portrayal of John Brown. Support your discussion with evidence from the text. What conclusions can you draw about how these writers' perspectives exemplify the 2 sides of the conflict in the Civil War? So let's take a look at the focus standards. These are hard to see. Hopefully that's a little bit better for people. Okay. So we can see we've got RH6 as the reading focus standard. Off the top of your head, it's the point of view standard. So we can head in and see that for middle schoolers and in history, we want them to identify aspects of a text that reveal an author's point of view or purpose, like loaded language, inclusion, or avoidance of particular facts. So aspects of author point of view. And then writing standard 2 is the writing focus, the big one, asking students to write informational texts based on or including narration of historical events. We also have the content standard down here, so we can identify any additional demands in the standard. There's 2 of them. Top one is asking students to demonstrate an understanding of the interpretive nature of history using different tools and resources. So we want to make sure they're investigating, describing, and analyzing significant historical events. And we want to make sure they're examining multiple cause and effect relationships that shaped history. So keep that content standard in mind, as well as analyze how this is nicely connected to reading standard 6. Analyze how people's perspectives influenced what information is available in the historical sources they created. A way to help kids get at source bias and context behind sourcing or behind the source. So go ahead, and I'd like you to take a look at the skills list now, which I've popped on page 3 here, and do the work of this protocol. I'm going to put this in the chat for you. So check that the wording of the skills are narrowed to the standards and to the social studies discipline, but they're still enduring. They're not so specific that they only apply to this particular assignment. And then just make sure the wording isn't an activity. Make sure it's actually saying ability to. So let me pop this in the chat. And let's see, I will put, let me make sure we get to your workshop thing. I'll put 6 minutes on the clock. And because that's a shorter amount of time, I'd say start with the reading process. But it's a pretty short, you might do reading process and transition to writing and then see what else you get to. But I would privilege reading process and transition to writing in our 6 minutes together. So, oh, sorry, that came out kind of as a long list in the chat with no numbers. Maybe if I do that, probably not. Well, you know what I want. Try to apply these 4 steps to the reading process and transition to writing. Take your own notes, and then we'll see what we've got the time to have you do. I might have you partner up, or we might do a verbal debrief. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will stop sharing so you have your screen back. I'm actually going to stop you where you are to get some of your verbal takeaways about what you're seeing, and then I would like us to practice offering some feedback. So I want to give a little more time for that. So let's just have a verbal discussion. What are you seeing in this skills list? Are you seeing that the wording is narrowed to the discipline and standards, the wording of the tasks, but still enduring, or are you seeing otherwise? Oh, sorry, Jane. Do you mind writing in the chat? So yeah, based on that quick look of the reading process and transition to writing, what are you noticing?
I'm noticing this feels really hard for the end of the day, which is giving I'm having a little bit of empathy for my teachers.
Totally, I know.
But
I'm with you.
One thing, just if I look at it, I don't even know if I'm doing this right, but if I look at analyzing the task, it says ability to analyze a text for specific elements stated in the teaching task. And I don't wonder if that shouldn't be narrowed, because they're having to look at relevant, well-chosen facts, definitions, concrete details. So I'm wondering if the language on that couldn't be refined so that they had to analyze a text for specific details, something like that.
There you go. And even that, though, let's make sure it's customized enough with, while still being enduring, but specific details kind of still. In this case, if we think about like what's the thinking work or the demands in reading standard 6, what actually are they reading these texts with a specific eye on? Like what actually are they reading for? Somebody.
because kind of what's there at the moment looks like it's the just something that's been taken as a standard from something else and kind of needs to be customized a little bit more. So like it's true, yes, you will do that, but that's nowhere near specific enough to be customized to this stuff.
Yeah. So if let me share my screen again, because what might be good, given where our brains are all at this time of day, is to do something like we did last week, where we even like, we should do in the chat, before I get into, we get into practicing how to offer feedback to this person. I say we just try to offer a rewrite of the definition for analyzing the text. So we know that the focused reading standard is asking kids to identify aspects of a text that reveal author's point of view, right? That's actually their purpose for reading these texts. They are looking for both authors' perspectives on John Brown, on John Brown. And then they need to analyze how those perspectives exemplify different viewpoints on the Civil War. So they're reading for a pretty particular purpose. How might you rewrite the skill definition for analyzing the text so that it's customized a little more for that focused reading standard, without being so narrow that it's obviously talking about John Brown, right? So I'll work alongside you. Let's just take a few minutes here and write in the chat. How would you rewrite ability to analyze a text for specific elements stated in the teaching task, so that it actually says what the enduring skill is when the kids get into reading for the purpose of the assignment. All right, nice thinking all around. I think what's really nice is we're all kind of aligning around this notion of customizing while still focusing on enduring skill. I like this activity. I totally recommend doing it with your PLCs. Pick one. And I actually think it's easiest for people to see if you can hone in on one of the skills from the reading process, because you can make such a clear connection to the reading standard. Like we really quickly all got to, hey, what's the biggest purpose for reading these texts? They have to look at author perspectives. And then you can really quickly see how you would adjust the skill definition, just to make sure you, as the teacher, if this is your module, you know when you head into the classroom that day, your real focus is to help kids develop the ability to look at a text and identify author point of view. That's something they have to do as adults in the world. Not look at a specific text and do it and then forget about how to do it, but actually just build this skill and apply it to reading the newspaper, reading college texts, whatever they've got in their future. So let's actually zoom out now. Oh, go for it.
Well, this has been helpful for me because I struggle with how to coach this. And using that wording from the focus standards really helped me hone in. So I'm looking at the writing process with the initial draft. We could apply the same thinking there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, God, I would love to take more time for this, because something else I would love to see is in the peer review or the revising section of most people's modules. So the day when the kids come in and you want them, usually you'll see a lot of, okay, let's peer review, exchange papers, everybody look for the usual like conventions, make sure everybody, capitalized and put periods. And then I guess look for a controlling idea. But I hardly ever see that even with peer reviews, typically about conventions. So for me, even to help a teacher be able to see, hey, on that peer review day, you really want the kids checking one another's work for evidence of whether or not the student actually read the text, for, in this case, and identified and analyzed author perspectives on whatever, on the Civil War in this case. That's why I actually I'm running away with myself, but I really think it's a cool idea in the peer review mini task to actually have the kids highlight one another's work for where they see at least the reading standards.
Megan, I have a question.
Yeah, Nada.
So, and this is also part of what piggybacking on Monique, that sometimes we do have a little bit of a problem coaching teachers when like the LDC is not completely aligned with what the school admins or what the lesson plans that we're looking for. So is there a reason why we're too general with our definition? Why not being specific to that task, because otherwise ability to, skills, being able to do the skills is going to look the same for many assignments or many.
You're actually getting at the heart of the matter, though. When we talk about enduring or transferable skills, you're reading for author perspectives in history in a different way than you're reading for, I suppose, if you're reading nonfiction in ELA, but you're still looking for kind of your reason and your purpose for looking for author perspectives is different based on the discipline that you're reading in. At the same time, as teachers, if you're looking to build alignment in your writing instruction across the school, you really want to be talking about and actually be teaching what we think of as enduring literacy skills. So the skill of being able to, look at a text and discern authors' points of view, competing points of view. In this case, we'd probably also want, you might have another mini task, or certainly in the discussion section, where you have kids identify source bias or, forces that influenced the source's perspectives. But the idea is the skill of looking at a text and determining author point of view about a specific topic, that is something we want kids doing across multiple assignments and carrying in with them into life. So you don't want it so specific that everybody's just thinking kind of like the usual old way. Like they're just thinking about getting their kids to complete this one assignment rather than thinking about what the literacy standards want us thinking about, which is what are the actual skills we want them not just practicing with this one assignment, but using in their lives, in college and career, and so on. I hope I'm talking a lot, so I hope
so
that
pretty much you're saying that we need to teach the students, not teach the students, we need to let the students understand they are building the skill rather than the assignment and what we're asking them to do, right? So that skill that they're going to carry on, whether they're going to history or they're going to English, whatever subject they're doing, right? Is that?
Yeah, that was beautifully put. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we want to continue to honor the discipline, right? Like the reason we read in ELA is different from the reason we read in science. And we want to talk openly about that with kids. But we also want to make sure that we know for ourselves and we're talking to them about how our ultimate goal in getting them to respond to these fancy prompts we develop is that they can read, write, speak, listen, and reason in all the ways that we do as adults or that we want adults doing. So yeah, it's what you said. And the focus on the skill, it's the whole, let's actually focus on the skills we're teaching kids rather than just the book we're trying to have them engage with. Because in 40 years, it would be nice if you remembered Jane Eyre, but it's a lot nicer if you can understand how word choice influences meaning so that you're not unduly persuaded by certain sources, right? So, okay, thanks for that question. I want to do something quick before we wrap up here, and I hope you don't mind it. I made a game time decision to prioritize this practice and this conversation rather than get into individual workshopping breakout sessions, because we're going to offer the one-on-one time to you after today anyway. So I thought we'll have time for that. As a group here, I wanted to talk more about what we mean by customizing the skills, but also making sure they're still teaching enduring or talking about enduring literacy skills. So before we break, let's talk about, your exit ticket is going to be to generate a piece of feedback for this author on this skills list. First things first, I'm heading into instructional cycle 1. As I do, I just like to look at the table of contents first to help me figure out, okay, what session could I go into to get a little bit of help to write feedback for this person? Or what session might I direct them to? So what do you guys think? If you had to pick 1 or 2 sessions to drill into to find some support for this person. Okay, let's do, finalized skills list. I'm seeing a bunch of 7s. Finalized instruction you might head into. Pitfall review, feedback. And my bad, shows you where my brain's at too. I was supposed to be looking at instructional cycle 2 and I was on 1. So good thinking all around. And let's see, if we're looking at instructional cycle 2 where the flow is a little bit different, because instructional cycle 2 is privileging or targeting developing the competencies around the skills list and mini tasks. Let's see, I guess I'd look at, what do you say, Marina? 8. Yeah, pitfall analysis. But maybe even before that, when they have to complete the skills list, because this person's really not at the point where I would yet have them do a pitfall analysis. They still have a lot of review to do. Not assist 6.
So I kind of thought it's still like relating really back to the focus standards, because that's really the bit that we had to kind of insert with where they are. So I didn't know whether session 5.
That's good thinking though. It totally depends on the person. Yeah. Let's assume this person has a pretty good, it looked like, right? Their task was good to go. Like they had their evidence of their focus standards was in their task. So let's assume they've got a pretty good grasp on the task itself and on keeping the task standards driven. So I'm actually going to, in the interest of time, I know at the end of session 6, there's our handy coaching for impact section. And there's actually some of those really useful data tips and possible responses that coaches can offer to authors. So as your exit ticket, I'll pop this little chart in the chat. And what I'd like you to do is offer a possible just comment that you would leave for this author to help them think about how they might adjust their skill definitions a little bit so that they're not so broad. Looks like we might use this STEM. Or this one. There's a couple different ways you could go. Oh, I like that, Marina. And offer like one rewritten skill so they know what you mean. While you're writing, I'm just going to set us up so you can see the kind of homework for next time. Nice, Ryan. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, it's cool once you finally actually use these little charts, you realize that they actually can make your feedback process a lot faster. You still, I recommend, you still offer the rewrite, because that gets back to our priorities for feedback. It's in particular actionable and specific. But yeah, these can really lighten the load, make that feedback work go faster. Yeah, Jane, you could use that one too. I noticed there's a couple different ones. Nice. All right, we're just at time. So let's wrap up. Got 2 items for you in our next steps. Let me pull one link. All right. So I mentioned that Monique and I would love for you to sign up for a one-on-one workshop to keep working on your own skills list in your own module, especially if you got a work in progress from your last national peer review. Like, bring your module, bring the feedback you got, and we'll just work together to help you apply it. So I'm going to pop in a little link to sign up for a one-on-one session. And again, we'll keep these, on the shorter end, half hour, unless we feel like we might need a little bit more. So that's in the chat for you to sign up for. If none of the times listed their work, just drop me a line. I put Monique's and my email in that doc, so you can email us, let us know what times do work for you. Let me make sure you have editing access. Yeah, okay. So check that out. And then here is our homework for next time, my friends. Yeah, I've asked you to revise your skills list. So you can do that during the one-on-one session, and then of course outside of it. And then for next time, please head into instructional cycle 3, sessions 5 and 6. And again, we're looking with the same eye, like what are the key facilitation moves and the critical content that in those sessions to you. Key moves, critical content. So again, that's it. Just make sure don't do what I did today. Make sure you're in instructional cycle 3. And again, 3 is really targeting mini tasks more heavily. So instruction. So go into 3 and check out sessions 5 and session 6. And we'll dig into mini tasks next time we see each other. Okay, thanks so much for staying a few minutes after. And I'll see you guys next week.
And a quick note, I just noticed that a couple people were in the workshop sign up document and deleting each other. So try not to do that. Yeah, be careful because I think it just looks like Brian's disappeared.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, yeah. I think you were overriding at the